Mike, there's a ton of questions that I would love to ask you, but the first one is how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here with a music instructor, since I have a growing hobby and passion for music, guitar specifically.
I know. I don't know how many people actually know that. I mean, I know you've written about it. You've mentioned it in All In,
Yeah,
and in other ones, but I don't know how because I was speaking to a fellow business owner and he didn't have a clue that you played the guitar. But I'm gonna touch on that a little bit later, because it's I know that most interviews will go on. We'll talk about your books and we'll talk
sure.
about your entrepreneurship and all that. I want to sort of go before that actually. I want to know initially, Mike, if I can, the Mike before all of that. What was Mike like as a kid?
Oh, as a kid, yeah, nerd, dork. Well, not the most popular kid, but kind of fit in a little bit, maybe a little bit invisible at times. It was funny. I was exercising today with my son, and I don't know why this came up as memory. When I was a child, we used to have a red wagon. It was called a flyer, and it had a handle that you pull the wagon on. But if you pulled it up, you could kind of steer it.
Yeah.
And we had a hill where we lived, and me and my neighborhood friends would race down the hill. But no one ever wanted to pull the wagon up, particularly if there's other kids in it. I remember, I don't know why I felt this way. I said, I'm going to be the guy who starts pulling this because I know somehow it'll make me stronger. I don't know why I believe that to be
Okay.
true. And that actually started give me it started making me stronger, and it gave me a perspective. And ultimately, I started participating in sports and became more athletic over time. Maybe it's
Yeah.
because of that red flyer.
Yeah. We had a
Yeah.
similar kind of thing. I mean, with my we had skateboards and we lived on
Oh
a
yeah.
big council estate in the northeast of England, and there was a big hill, and very often we'd crash into somebody that was just coming out of their front path. And the times we got in trouble for things like that, and of course we ran off.
Of
Um,
course, what you run
yeah,
away.
it's just
Yeah.
how it was, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, Now, Mike, it's before the business world knew you. Were you always drawn to entrepreneurship, or did you have like, as my wife would call, a proper job? Did you ever have like a proper job, or were you always drawn to what you do?
I no, I was not always drawn to this. I never anticipated to be an entrepreneur. I did have a proper job for a period of time. So to give context, growing up as a child, my father had one job with one company. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. It was a great experience to be raised in that environment. And it also set these expectations that when I graduated from university, that I would get a particular job and I would see it all the way to the end, retire and get a pension. Well, of course, the environment's changed, but I
Mm,
couldn't even get a proper job out of school that I wanted. I did get a job working for a computer store,
yeah,
but didn't really particularly enjoy how it was managed or the people I was working with. Not that they were bad people, it just wasn't a fit ultimately.
yeah.
But my another colleague there, one day one night we went out for drinks. He's like, "Why don't we start our own business?" And the power of cocktails. My God, I was like, "This is brilliant. Why didn't I think of this?" So I became an entrepreneur, a hungover entrepreneur, basically the next day, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
But I burned my bridges, and now I was all in. And it took time, but I've fallen in love with entrepreneurship. I mean, absolutely love it.
Yeah, and that's your life's mission is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. And I'm gonna touch on that just briefly before we go on. When did that? I mean, I know the story of your daughter with your piggy bank,
Yeah.
and that prompted you to think profit first and all that kind of thing. But what prompted the your dedication to eradicate entrepreneurial
Yeah,
poverty?
I'll show you. Yeah, I'll tell you and I'll show you. I've got a little sign right there. There's my life's
Yeah.
mission. Right, cancer. But I have that in all of my workspaces. This is just my office down the road from where I live. As a reminder, it does tie back to multiple moments, but one of them was my daughter. So as an entrepreneur, I built some businesses. I sold them. I thought I had everything figured out. And then I went on to start investing in businesses and was horrible at it. I lost everything. I called myself back then an angel investor. In reflection, I call myself the angel of death. I was so bad at it. And what happened was I had to come to my family after my accountant told me that we had to pay off debts we couldn't pay anymore. We were going to lose our house. We did, and all these different things. I told my family, and my daughter volunteered her piggy bank. I remember her saying, "Because Daddy, I know you can't pay for our bills, but I'll take care of it." And it was and she was 9. It was gut wrenching because
Yeah.
I define myself as a provider. You know, I provide for myself, my family, our community, just like you.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing the one job I assigned myself. Well, I went on to start writing books, but I discovered, gosh, so many entrepreneurs struggle. But there's this thing, I can't say I'm struggling. Could you imagine going to a client saying, our music school is really, really struggling, or we're down in the dumps, we're barely getting by, we can't pay bills, can't pay our instructors. Would you like to get an education here? No,
It doesn't
you
work.
have to put on this air of confidence and success. So there's this perception, and then there's this reality, and that gap is what I call entrepreneurial poverty.
Hmm.
And I've lived it. I hope to never experience it again, but my commitment is to close that gap. I want people living the vision they have.
Hmm.
I also believe entrepreneurs are the greatest contributors to our society. It ain't governments. It's entrepreneurship. It makes commerce go around. And so I want to elevate entrepreneurs any way I can. I have to.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. And I know that when I read the story about your daughter, my son was about 7 years old when I first, and it pulls at your heartstrings, doesn't it? It just when you think about a child doing that, it's
Yeah,
incredible. The innocence of it is amazing.
it's amazing. Yeah, and they depend on us, and um, they. The problem is most of us cannot face that. Many of us had that moment, and we can't face it anymore. We want to kind of wash it away. And what I found is there's power in sharing the ugliness because it triggers connection. And I hope more and more entrepreneurs go on to share it, not to delve into it and dwell in it. I don't want to live in that
No.
struggle, but I want to expose it. And with that comes freedom and connection, and then we can move forward.
Yeah, of course, of course. And I mean, whether or not people are entrepreneurs or not, I mean, I think that in the UK, about 10% of people perhaps run their own business, maybe slightly more. And it's whether they seem to at the moment, and it's we have people in charge of our country at the minute. Never mind, but they seem to be
Same
stuck.
here. Same here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we can't do a lot about that.
Yeah.
But they seem to be stuck in some kind of hustle loop. Is there
Yeah.
is there a mindset switch that you can suggest to help people, whether or not they're in business, to get out of that kind of hustle loop?
Sure. So I've broken it, and the realization first was an identity shift. So I saw myself as a workaholic, and actually saw that as a positive label. Like, oh, I'm relentless at working. But I was reading a book one day, and they said any form of a holism is an addiction. So a workaholic has an addiction to work, and there's compromise elsewhere. So it's like, okay, that's a big problem. So I've never again said I'm a workaholic, or be proud of that. I think I said I'm an efficient aholic. So maybe that's a new addiction, but it's all about efficiencies and outcomes. So first of all, who are we? The second thing is, and this is the most empowering, is the number one job I believe of an entrepreneur is not to do the job, is to be creative jobs. You shared in England, 10% of the population are entrepreneurs, but that means 90% of the UK is seeking good jobs with good companies
Yeah,
to live a good life.
yeah,
Our job is to create jobs. So I realized, my gosh, every time I do the work, I'm stealing that opportunity from a colleague to do that work to fulfill their life's objectives. So my job is to create jobs. And I don't take that responsibility lightly,
mm,
but that's my job. And that helped me shift out of this. The other thing is the last thing that really helped too was realizing the more I inserted myself into my work, that the more I was preventing my colleagues from stepping into something that may give them joy or empowerment. So I had an experience 6 or 7 years ago now. I left the business for 4 consecutive weeks, and my assistant turned off
mm,
my email. It was a full disconnect. It was like, it was like I assume getting off of a drug. I was shaking and scared. It was like terrifying. And I came back expecting my business would have just been destroyed. I came back to the business, not being fantastic, but it wasn't bad. It was pretty much the same. And I asked my colleagues what happened. They said, Mike, you always said that you believe in us, but you never demonstrated it. This was the first time you gave us the keys to the kingdom. We felt empowered. We've got this, and we're now excited. And that became a shift. Is if we as entrepreneurs are doing the work, we are disempowering our team, and that's shameful.
No, I agree. And I know I'm not sucking up, but I was listening to Clockwork in my car earlier.
Nice. You are sucking up. You are.
There's Clockwork and there's Get Different. Get Different is my favorite, but Clockwork is a close second. Get Different. Well, I'll cover the creativity in business a little bit later, but I think Get Different just resonates with me because it is so creative. It's a mindset of I can actually be creative with this as opposed to just number crunching, which I hate.
Yeah, and I think for most entrepreneurs, since you started a business, that is the definition of creation. You took something that was non-existent and brought formation to it and energy to it. It's bringing in revenue. It's serving people. Like that's the ultimate definition of creation. And listen, I'm not poo-pooing artists. What artists create is amazing. And I see a statue and so forth, and it's beautiful and engaging. But I think entrepreneurship is a full creation. It's all of the elements, and it's a living thing. It changes over time.
Yeah.
So Get Different, the premise is customers, prospects will recognize us not because we're the loudest of the community saying the same thing. It's because we're doing something that is unexpected, and it opens up our mind to observing it. So as an example, I was working with a photography industry, and I asked this group, it was 1,000 people in a survey. I said, what are the ways to advertise? And there was like 3, maybe 4 common responses. Most of them send out a postcard during photography season, graduations from university or a holiday season. And on a postcard, they'd have their 4 or 5 favorite portraits and say, we can make a portrait like this for you. So I said, okay, that is step one of what not to do. Because if everyone's doing it, it's become a noise to the customer, and the customer is very attuned to ignoring noise. So I said, okay, that's not what to do. And there are some other things listed. Then we take these ideas and say, what is the total 180, the reverse of it? So if everyone's sending out pictures, what if we send out empty frames, no picture at all?
Yeah.
And that became this idea. And what we did is one studio took me up on this. We sent out frames to prospects, and it was a beautiful frame. And in the middle, there was not a single picture. It simply said, most people put their pictures in the cloud, but the ones you cherish go in frames. We will create the ones you cherish. And sure enough, and then here's our contact information. The phone was ringing off the hook.
Brilliant.
Different gets attention. We need to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you talked about, obviously it's very easy to follow the crowd, isn't it? I mean, it's so easy to follow the crowd. But is there a common mistake that you find business owners make?
It's so easy because it's so simple. It's funny. I think there's this propensity for most of us, and I'm guilty as charged, that I want to be noticeable without being noticed.
Yeah.
I want to stand out without standing out. And it's this kind of weird duality. So when I see everyone's behaving or dressing a certain way, I want to dress that way. I'm wearing what everyone else is wearing around here. I'm not wearing this bright, orange jacket with flashing lights on it. But if I did, I'd get attention. The reason I don't is I want to fit in. I want to feel comfortable and accepted. It's part of the Maslowian hierarchy of needs, is a need for belonging. So what we do is we comply to be part of or belong to a community, but we need to defy to get recognized. So that's why there's this strange duality. I don't want to be rejected, but my gosh, I want to be noticed. So what I invite people to do is do something that defies the norm, but also is congruent with who you are. So I'm just not someone that would wear a bright flannel blinking jacket. I think because that's not who I am, my consumer would notice me, but also say that's inauthentic or you're kind of a weirdo. But there's other areas that are my idiosyncrasies, my differences that I exacerbate. And by exacerbating those idiosyncrasies, that becomes different because most people won't do that, but it's also true to me. Yeah. So you've read my books. I joke around in my books. Yeah. Most authors don't do that. If you've listened to the audio, I'll riff and just share different stories and tangentials. Most authors don't do it. It's different, It's simple, but it's also true to who I am. And that's how you stand out.
Yeah, and yet we use the that tribe activity in business as well to build tribes, to build a following of our own. So we actually use that behavior as well, don't we, as
We
entrepreneurs?
do, we absolutely do, right? So everyone wants to belong. It's the third level of the Maslow hierarchy.
Yeah,
What's interesting about standing out is you are, to some degree, removing yourself or rejecting yourself from the common community, but you're also establishing a new community. You're saying this is what I stand for, and then a community revolves around that. We're That's the irony. We're all looking for leaders, and the leaders that we resonate with are people that are like us. I was saying that people like them.
yeah,
We like people who are like us. So when someone takes that risk of doing something different than an established tribe, but it's true to who they are, it's an expression of themselves, other people that are like that will say, finally, someone's speaking up. I want to be part of that community.
yeah, yeah. No, it's brilliant. And it's the if you were, I mean, your book titles. It's I read Profit first,
Oh, cool. Thanks.
because it was my business was in dire straits. I mean, it was.
Mm.
It's and so it was, but it took me a long flipping time to read it. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It was on my shelf for a long time before
Yeah,
I
yeah, that's
actually read
normal.
it. You know, I mean, I don't know how. I'm assuming that's quite common as well with
It's
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting about books or any knowledge is when you consume something, you buy that video online to learn something. I want to learn guitar, so I'll get an online course or something. There is a relief in that moment from the pain of not knowing. So I want to be good at guitar. I want to learn guitar. I'll try it out. I buy the course. I'm in this heightened moment. And now I'm like, oh, I don't want to make the effort, but
Mm,
at least I got the course. So I actually feel some degree of success. Then over time, of course, because I'm not participating, I may reinvigorate that and say, you know what? I said I was going to do this. And instead of absorbing what I already have, that amazing course, I'll buy the new course and I get invigorated. Well, it's the same thing with books. Someone's like, I'm struggling with profit. Oh, there's this dude that wrote this book on profit. Let me get that. And the second we have it, there's enough relief to put on the shelf and say, you know what, I get back to life as normal. And then 6 months later or a year later, the pain builds up again, or maybe we crack the book or buy a different book to replace it. So it's normal. What we have to do as authors or educators is give people a really small, easy step to feel that reward
yeah.
instantaneously. What I try to do is profit first, and it may have not worked in your case, but what I try to do is once you buy the book, it's the cover, the lessons in the cover, it's profit first.
Yeah.
I want that to be enough that someone's like, oh, maybe I just put profit first, just enough to trigger that belief and understanding.
Yeah.
If I can get someone just to dabble in it, then maybe they'll do the next dabbling and the next, and that's when momentum kicks in.
Yeah, absolutely. And your other ones are just as legendary, really. But if you were to distill everything into one book, what would the message be?
Like all my books, or just profit first into one.
Everything that you've written, and you will write because you're still writing, aren't you? Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. If I had to distill everything, I would steal a line that's attributed to Oscar Wilde, out of Ireland originally. And he said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Yeah.
I've found that the ultimate success in marketing is by expressing yourself authentically. The ultimate success in profitability is by being genuine and true to yourself and the brand. The ultimate in efficiency is being true to yourself and leaning into it. So it's just self-expression. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Brilliant. And now we move on to music. Now, you've already said that you play the guitar.
Yeah.
And how long have you been playing?
I've been playing for almost 40 years, but I've been playing for 39 years the first year, the basic chords and stuff.
Yeah.
It's really in the last year that I'm studying music theory. I understand scales now, can solo. I've really improved in the last year.
Have you? And how, I mean, you say that now, so in the last year, how much more enjoyable is it? And I
Oh my
mean
God.
a genuine question because what you mentioned scales and it's and teaching the kids. I mean, we teach from 4 or 5 years old, and
Wow.
teaching them how important scales are is an impossible task. So
Oh,
please,
it's everything, man. It's like scale. I didn't scales are great for soloing, but they're great for chord assembly. Like understanding the difference between a major, a minor, a seventh,
yeah,
dominant seventh. Like it's all coming to me, and So it's funny, just a couple of days ago, I was sitting at my house, just fiddling around the guitar, and on the radio comes Comfortably Numb. And I'm like, my God, I'm going to start. I soloed through the entire song. Gilmore still put me to shame. But I'm sitting there, hitting the minor pentatonic. It's in the key of no, I think it's key of B minor. So I'm just wailing on it. I now use the cage system. So I'm all over the fretboard. I'm like, this stuff sounds good.
Yeah.
To your point, the enjoyability, it skyrockets. It skyrockets. So instead of sitting there just trying to play a song by like, what are the five major chords they're playing here? None of that stuff anymore. I can, it's such self-expression, and I can almost immerse myself. I can lose myself for hours in it now. Back in the day, play a few chords for an hour or so, a few songs, the three songs I know over and over again, gets boring. Now it's like this whole thing's opened up. Scales. It's all about scales.
Thank you. I'm gonna bottle that, and I'm gonna send it to every child that we teach.
Every child, learn the pentatonic scale. It gives you major, it gives you minor. Boom,
Yeah.
you're set to go. And the other thing is, now you can play along on the radio. Like any song you like on this planet, you just find the key. It's pretty easy. You can even look it up if you don't know the key. And then you're part of the experience while you're listening on the radio. It's the best.
And how are you finding the theory? I mean, when you say you're learning theory, because we have a horrible system over here, whereas theory is almost separate to practical. And are you learning the theory as you do the practical as well? So
yeah, okay. Because maybe I'm ignorant. I think they're integrated. So to me, on guitar, the caged system,
yeah,
which is based on theory and how the whole fretboard integrates and how the notes, has been transformative. Like once I understood the cage system, like, okay, that was a game changer. But now, another theory is chord development. I'm studying that now. Like a major chord's a 1-3-5.
yeah,
And I never realized that before. But a minor chord is a 1 flat 3-5 or so. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But I'm learning this, and it just keeps on expanding the ability to navigate the keyboard. And for the first time, I'm musical as opposed to mechanical. So before it was like chord, chord, chord. And now it's like, oh, just get into the flow. And like you feel this transition from mechanical to musical.
Yeah.
That's been fantastic.
And how do you associate we touched on it a little bit. I'd like to develop the idea of the musical and creativity within an entrepreneurship. How are they married? Do they hold hands? Are they linked together, this creativity and musicianship with entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know if I've put enough thought in that yet. I know there is a connection. I do see this is off the top of my head, is there are still rules in music. It's not like you can play any note on the chromatic scale and that's going to work. Like you'll hit flat spots and it sounds pretty bad. So there's this structure. And once you understand the structure, then there's this freedom. Well, the same thing with entrepreneurship. There's certain structure you need to follow. You need to make sure your business is sustainably profitable. You need to make sure you're catering to a customer need. Otherwise, no one's going to consume it. So there's certain rules. But once you understand the basic tenets of these rules, then you can start doing expression, the bends, the vibratos, the hammer-ons and offs, the double stops, like all these things like open up.
Yeah.
Once you simply know the core rules.
Yeah. No, that's great. And if running a business was like being in a band, what would the lead role be? Would it be the singer, the producer?
You know what I think the most important role in the band is, and it's the same thing with business, is actually the drummer. The drummer keeps time. They move the song along. They add some fill elements. They're always in the back, almost always in the background, unless it's Phil Collins, but they're always in the background. And yet without them, the missing piece isn't there. I think it's the integrator. So entrepreneurship is, probably the front man of the band or lead singer, or maybe the guitarist. They're the one who the women are throwing the underwear up to on stage. But
that's never happened to me,
by the way. I haven't got there yet either. So I heard. But the drummer's keeping it all together. I think in business, the entrepreneur is the one who's coming up with these crazy lyrics and kind of the vision. But the drummer is the integrator. It's the person that keeps it going along. I rarely, and it happens, but I rarely see the Phil Collins in the entrepreneurial space, someone who can sing and keep the beat at the same time. That's rare.
Yeah, I think it's because interestingly, I would say the same thing about the bass guitar player. I
Oh, they're
think
all, yeah, yeah. You need them. My God.
yeah, and I think it's because being I'm a trumpet player and a keys player personally. So and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so the being in jazz bands with a great bass player and an average drummer kind of
Oh,
work. You know,
yeah.
it's yeah. So it's
The bass player is everything, particularly in jazz. Yeah.
yeah,
And but same thing, drums or bass, they're usually on the side of the stage. It's rare that you have them getting all the accolades, and yet they're carrying the band. I think Geddy Lee from Rush is the only bassist I think that's kind of a front man too.
yeah, yeah, brilliant. Uh, Mike, this has been incredible. Incredible. I
Um,
always end my podcast with one question, and that question is: if you could speak to your younger self, or you were speaking to, say, a teenager now, what advice would you give them?
I would, what? This is a good question because I don't know if the advice would be heard. So if like, make sure as you grow a business, uh, you'll be profitable or something like that and take your profit first. I don't know if I listened. So I'd say two things. I first of all say, everything's gonna be all right. And then I'd also give me a little insult to toughen me up. I'd say nerd. So I'd say, everything's gonna be all right, nerd, to me. And I mean, what? Why did they do that to me? You'll learn, nerd.
Brilliant. Mike, I cannot tell you how much this means. Your books
Thanks.
have transformed my business and they have transformed businesses that I know as well. They've transformed people how think, and thank you so much for your time today. I know how precious it is, and I've waited almost a year for this half an hour, and I get it. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, mate. It was a real joy meeting you. Be well.
Thank, thank you very much.